Bonjour à tous, and today we're going to learn all about reflexive verbs, some reciprocal stuff, particularly in the passé composé, which we'll get there, but I'll start off in the present tense because that's pretty much the easiest, and this is where you'll see it a lot. You'll also see it a lot in the passé composé as well, so yeah, I'm just going to go over all of it. Se is a pretty common word. It's a reflexive pronoun. You'll see it a lot of times just with reflexive verbs. Just in general, like je m'appelle, that comes from s'appeler. So, yeah, we're just gonna go over it. So, let's begin. So, I was thinking, every French student goes through this, in their French, learning career. When you go from je mange, je t'aime, and you fais, and all of this stuff. And then, one day you're just in French class, and then you just look at the board and you see something like this. And then you just, hit over the head with it, and, you start asking yourself where it all went wrong, and I never personally had this issue, but, I know a lot of people who have. So, basically, this video is aimed to help anyone who's, struggling with some reflexive stuff, or reciprocal stuff. So, what is it? Qu'est-ce que c'est ce? It can mean, like, itself, himself, herself, their self, oneself, really. It doesn't even really matter. It's whoever is performing it, it happens to them. So that's basically it. So basically, it can change forms, but that really depends on what the subject is. If you recall what a subject pronoun is, that's just like, in English, that's just like I, you, me, he, she, all that, je, tu, il, elle, on, nous, vous, il, elle, all this stuff. So basically, ce is going to change depending on what the subject is. So if you're using je, it's going to be me. If you're using tu, it's going to be te. Il, elle, on, that's not really going to change, unfortunately. Nous is actually a lot like vous. Nous, ce is just going to keep, the same as nous. Vous, il, elle, ce. It doesn't really change. But, it's good to keep this little list in mind because you're going to need it. So you're told to conjugate se fâcher, which means to get oneself angry. Also keep in mind that when you ask someone, what does se fâcher mean, they're most likely going to say, oh, it means to get angry. Even though it really in French it means to get oneself angry. In French, it's a lot more common to do an action yourself, je me fâche, like I'm getting myself angry, I myself am getting angry, In English, you don't really see it, you have the words myself, yourself, himself, herself, all this stuff, but you don't really use it as often as you do in French. In French, you're going to use, these reflexive verbs a lot more often. So, when it really means, like I myself am getting angry, if you want an actual translation, they're most likely going to say, oh, I'm getting angry, because that's the closest, actual translation if you're going to, directly translate it like so. So, how do you conjugate it? If you want to say, like, you're getting angry, tu te fâches, notice how the tu agrees with tu, and the actual fâché part, it just agrees with tu also, like as if it wasn't even reflexive, just fâche, like you remove the er, add es, tu te fâches. If you want to say, like, we're getting angry, on se fâche, on se fâche, mais non, or nous nous fâchons, it does look funny, there's two nous, right there, nous, but they're different. One's the subject and one's the reflexive pronoun. So nous nous fâchons, and that's just a version of se, and it agrees. So you're in Paris, and this woman comes up to you, and her husband just died. And she's sad, but she's not really sad about that. She's sad because, a lot more pressing matters. She forgot how to conjugate, se raser. So, what do? Like, you come up and you say, she's asking you, how do you conjugate se raser? And at the time, you don't know, but you're watching this video, and by the end of it, you should know. So, se raser, it goes like so. Je me rase, tu te rases, il se rase, nous nous rasons, vous vous rasez, il se rase. So, as you can see, there's nothing really too special about this verb. It's just je me, tu te, il se, nous nous, vous vous, il se. they just all agree with their proper subject. So je, me, tu, te, and then the rasé part, you just conjugate it just like a regular verb. And hopefully, if you're watching this, you know how to conjugate a regular er verb. So these are versions of se. So if we move on to another verb, se réveiller, which means to wake oneself up, which some may argue just means to wake up. How do you conjugate this? Very similarly, je me réveille, tu te réveilles, il se réveille, nous nous réveillons, vous vous réveillez, il se réveille, you know. So you're just conjugating réveiller, and you're just keeping the je me, tu te, il se, nous nous, vous, il se. You know, if you're using je, you're always going to use me. If you're using tu, it's always going to be te. Il se, nous, vous, il se, etc. Hopefully, you can remember that, because it's actually not that hard. So they agree. So what about the passé composé? So the thing with the passé composé is that you're going to sometimes agree it, and you're sometimes not. But more often than not, you are going to agree it. And I'll show you examples of both. So we know that passé composé consists of an auxiliary verb and past participle. This is actually the same for every single compound tense and mood in French. It's always going to be these two. In this case, all reflexive verbs, if it uses se in any which way, shape, or form, it's going to be être, and the past participle is just a past participle. So it goes before être. So, for example, se réveiller in the passé composé is je me suis réveillé, tu t'es réveillé, il s'est réveillé, nous nous sommes réveillés, vous vous êtes réveillés, ils se sont réveillés. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You just have, you know, the je me, tu te, il se, the thing we've been going over numerous times, agreeing with the subject. Then you just have être, there it is, and then just a past participle. And yeah. In this case, you're going to agree it. So notice if you're a girl, and you're saying je me suis réveillé, I woke up, then you're going to add an e at the end, because it's feminine. If you're saying tu t'es réveillé, and you're still talking to a girl, you woke up, tu t'es réveillé, then the tu is a girl, so you're going to add an e at the end. And nous nous sommes réveillés, if you're all girls, you'll add an es, the e because it's feminine, and an s because it's more than one person. If it's just masculine, you don't add an e because it's not feminine, you just add an s, and like so. So yeah. So the se, être, and past participle, or the participle passé, will always agree to the subject pronoun. So the reflexive pronoun and être, those are always going to agree no matter what. The past participle is something different. Also, hopefully, I think I've clarified this a few times already, but the subject pronoun is just, you know, je, vous, you know, je, tu, il, elle, on, nous, vous, il, elle. You know, in English, it's just like I, you, me, he, she, they, we, and whatnot. So it goes in this order: subject pronoun, se, être, passé, le participle passé. Now, if the direct object is after être, you don't agree the past participle. So to understand this better, I made some examples. So if you're a girl and you're saying je me suis cassé le genou, if you look closely, remember I said earlier you'd add an e, but where's the e? Well, because you have le genou, and that's after être. So this sentence means I broke my knee. So je me suis cassé le genou. And yeah, so it's just le genou, because it's after être, and you know, it's just filler. It's just like an extra bit of information after être has already been said. Also, I can't remember if I clarified this or not already, but basically, you're going to say le genou, not mon genou. If you say mon genou, you know, I mean, you've already said je me suis. You've already let everyone know it's me. So you don't have to say it again, like je me suis cassé mon genou. You've already let everyone know, like, no, it's je me suis. If, you know, so you just add le, you just add what's it called? Le genou. It's I really should know this. The oh god. Definite article. Jeez. Okay, definite article. It was at the tip of my tongue for the longest time, but yeah, le genou. So je me suis cassé le genou. You don't have to say mon because you've already let everyone know it's me. So in these sentences, they're just perfect. It's elle s'est lavée, elle s'est brossée, ils se sont cassés. These are perfect little sentences. And they all agree. Like, look at the elle s'est lavée. There's an extra e at the end because it's feminine. Elle s'est brossée. There's an extra e at the end because there's an e at the end. It's feminine. Ils se sont cassés. There's an s at the end because it's ils, that's plural. So ils se sont cassés. These are fine. You just agree. All of them in these instances. But if you look, if we add something to the end, elle s'est lavée at the top, elle s'est lavée les mains. There's a little bit, of information at the end, and that's also called the direct object. If you ever hear your teacher, say that, elle s'est lavée les mains, then, that basically ruins it, so you don't agree it anymore. Look at the second one from the top, elle s'est brossée. You agree it, it's fine, there's nothing wrong with it. But then at the bottom, this elle s'est brossée les dents. Extra information at the end, les dents. Oh, well, that ruins it, so great. So now you can't agree it anymore. Ils se sont cassés. So it's fine, you agree. Ils se sont cassés. Les genoux. Okay, well, les genoux is at the end now, so you just don't agree it anymore. Because the direct object is way after the past participle, and the past participle être. And in these instances, it's c'est, ce sont. Okay, so a little bit of information. Once you have these little things that I've highlighted in blue, you just don't agree it. So there's something in French called the Reciprocal. Very easy. It's very easy to mix it up with reflexive verbs, simply because they follow almost all of the same rules as reflexive verbs. So everything I've said up to now is the same thing in the reciprocal. So je, me, tu, te, il se, nous, nous, vous, vous, il se, all that's the same, except this time it means each other. So for example, here's a song called Captivement. It's by Cour des Pirates, and the first line of the song is je sais qu'on a tant de choses à se dire. And if you notice, hopefully you spotted it. I mean, we've only been talking about it the whole video, but this little se over here. So je sais qu'on a tant de choses à se dire, which means I know that we have a lot of things to tell each other. So this each other, this no longer, even though it's se, it doesn't mean myself or anymore, that ourselves. It means each other. And if you look at it, it kind of makes sense. Like, I know that we have a lot of things to tell to ourselves. That doesn't really make sense. A lot of things to tell to each other. That's more, logical. So this means each other. And also, let's take a moment to appreciate that this is agreed to this on, which is all the way over here. So it's all about context, but in the reciprocal, there's one little detail that separates it from the verb réfléchir, which is reflexive verbs, in the passé composé. There's this one little difference. So, so basically, how do I put this? Like, if you have a verb with a reflexive verb, it doesn't matter if the verb takes a direct or indirect object. You're either going to, it doesn't matter if it's parler or if it's voir, you're going to agree it. Of course, unless, the direct object is like, remember I said like all that filler at the end, like les dents, les cheveux, or whatever, then you're not going to agree it. But as far as the verb goes, the actual verb you decide to use has nothing to do with whether you agree it or not. So in the reciprocal, you don't agree indirect objects basically. So dire, which means to tell or to say. Can you dire ah? Yes. So it's gonna take lui or leur in the past tense. You know, if you ever heard someone say je lui ai dit que, you know, I told him that da da da, you know, whatever. So that's gonna take lui or leur, which are both indirect. But the rule is that if it takes an indirect, then you just don't agree at all. It doesn't matter. So, for example, you don't agree dire, so you could say ils se sont dit que, you know, dot dot dot. Notice there's no agreement really, because it takes indirect object. You know, there's dire, and it takes indirect object, and this is reciprocal. So no agreement. That's pretty much it. So let's go to another word, parler. Can you parler? Ah, yes. So that's gonna take lui or leur. You know, je lui ai parlé. You could say that, like I spoke to him. So, you know, just in that context, it's using lui. So you're just not gonna agree it. So ils se sont parlé. There's no s at the end. If you look closely at the end of parler, there's no s at the end. Because why? Because parler takes indirect object. This means each other. There's no agreement. Last verb, let's go to voir, which means to see. You can't really see at something, so it's going to take a direct object instead. Not indirect, a direct, not indirect. So instead of lui or leur, it's going to take le, la, and les, which are direct to something completely different. And in this instance, since it's direct, you can just agree it. So it's no longer indirect. It's like, if it's indirect, just don't do it. Just don't agree it. No matter what, in the reciprocal, don't agree it if it's indirect. If it's direct, who cares? You just agree it. It's just what you gotta do. So like, nous sommes vous, there's an s at the end of vous. Vous is a past participle of voir, so you add an s. So there's voir. This is from se. Takes a direct object. You add an s, which the s comes from the agreement of the subject, which is nous. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you ever had any questions concerning like just general, you know, when or when do I not agree stuff in the passé composé, you know, this is a little piece of it as far as reflexive verbs and reciprocal. As far as that goes, there are other instances where things just aren't reflexive. It's just like regular verbs, you know, then you do or don't agree it. That's something different, which I'll probably make a separate video for that, actually. But yeah, I hope that answered any questions you have. All in all, if it's reflexive, just agree it. If it's reflexive and there's a direct object that's like way at the end, after the past, after the past participle, then don't agree it, because it's after. And if it's after, like it's late. It's like late to the appointment, so it's bad. It doesn't work. And then reciprocal, yeah, you just agree it. Like it's all the same rules as the reflexive verbs, except for the fact that if it takes an indirect object, don't agree it. So that's just basically the main differences. Hope that helped. Take care.